9 films, a TV series, books, and even a Mortal Kombat DLC character. Nightmare on Elm Street is widely considered a classic by many horror movie enthusiasts, specifically slasher movie enjoyers. Freddy Fazbear was first introduced... What? Oh, it's not... Oh. Sorry about that, guys. I apologize. I thought the main villain was Freddy Fazbear. Krueger?
Never made it as a wise man.
Freddy Krueger was first introduced to us with A Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984, not 1884. Sir, he had knives for fingers. All right. A Nightmare on Elm Street was written and directed by Wes Craven. I like horror movies, but honestly, there is a lot I haven't seen. Nightmare on Elm Street being one of them, or I guess 9 of them. I was gonna watch them all, but I figured, why don't I make sure that people wanna watch this type of video versus, you know, just going straight for it and do all 9 movies. So if this video gets 50 likes, then I will do the second Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and if that video does good, then I'll do all of them and rank them accordingly. But anyway, 50 likes, we'll get a part 2. Today I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I present to you the whiteboard. I figured it would be kind of fun to walk through it with a whiteboard rather than me just telling you guys what's going on. The movie begins with Freddy making his knives in his factory. He's kind of like Willy Wonka, but instead of making chocolate, he kills kids, which is still pretty much the same thing as Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
We're in trouble, Charlie. I can't stop.
It's pulling me in!
See? Corridor gets it. We get introduced to this character named Tina. She is lost in the factory, and as we get credits rolled on the screen, I see something very interesting. Johnny Depp? What the fuck? Johnny Depp always looks so different every movie he plays in, so we'll see what he looks like here. Yes, the Johnny Depp is in this movie. Not only the Johnny Depp, but a very young Johnny Depp. So young that I later found out that this is actually his first movie.
What?
How did I not know about this? Also, Johnny Depp? You mean Willy Wonka? I don't know, man. Seems a little iffy. Johnny Depp's character turns into Willy Wonka, then the Mad Hatter, and then Freddy Krueger. It all makes sense. It's canon. Has to be. Alright, back to the movie. She's running away from Freddy, scared. Oh, wait. Gotta go to the board. Can you see that? That's Tina. She's running away from Freddy scared because... I mean, look at him. Looks like a nutsack came to life and put on a Christmas sweater. Until she wakes up. After she realized it was only just a dream. Tina's mom rushes into the room to make sure everything's alright. And everything is, until they realize that she has a cut on her shirt. So Tina's mom tells her to cut her fingernails or stop dreaming. One or the other. Tina eventually goes back to sleep and on to the next day. Tina tells her friends Nancy and Johnny Depp. His name is Glenn. I'm just telling you, this fella is Johnny Depp. Once again, back to the whiteboard. Yes, it is. Johnny, yes, Papa. We could probably go ahead and erase this. Does Glenn have 2 N's in his name? I have no idea. I have changed locations. That is because we really had to dive deep, so we had to change locations. Tina tells her friends Nancy and Glenn. I messed up here. I meant to say Tina tells her friends that she had a nightmare, and Nancy also says she has a nightmare the night before. But we don't really go that deep into it because we then meet our Prince Charming of the film.
In fact, I had a bad dream last night myself.
I had a hard-on this morning when I woke up, Tina.
He's so dreamy. Glenn gives clues that he also may have possibly had a nightmare the night before as well. But he doesn't respond whenever Tina asks because he has to get to class. Fucking nerd. I better get to my class. Lame. I forgot to give him a body. Oh my good lord. That'll do for his body. Then we have our Prince Charming, which is Rod. And Rod is red. Get it? Rod, red. Right now, the people that we know have had a bad dream is Tina, Nancy, and we aren't too sure about these 2. But we do know one of them woke up with a
hard-on,
which is badass. Holy. After school, we pull up to Nancy's house because the fam isn't home.
Bonus, we're so getting late tonight.
Nancy then tells us that she had a nightmare last night with a man with a dirty hat and a dirty green and red sweater. Does that sound familiar to you guys? Glenn looks up from the phone. He has a little bit of shock in his eyes. Now, you might not think too much about this whenever you watch the movie, but this does confirm that he also had that dream. Boom! Nightmare confirmed. He also had the same dream, but he doesn't say anything because he's a manly man. And he don't complain, and he's not scared. They hear a noise outside, and one that strikes similarities to the noise that they hear in their dreams, which is kind of like a screeching sound. Almost kind of like a guy had knives on his fingers, and he's scraping it against a wall, for reference. We look, and then we get hit with a sneaky little jump scare. But it's just Rod. Rod is definitely creepy in this movie. Like, really creepy. He shows up to have sex with Tina, which we never really get consent on. She doesn't really say anything. But Tina starts talking to Glenn and Nancy outside the house, and what does he do? Well, duh, he sneaks up behind her, grabs her mouth, and then drags her upstairs. Help this girl. Tina and Rod have sex, which she appears to be happy that they did so because the noises. And after she says, I knew there was something I liked about you. So that's good. By the vibe he was giving off, I wasn't too sure who the villain of this movie was going to end up being. While Rod and Tina are pillow talking, Rod informs Tina that he also had a nightmare the night before that related to Tina's. But Rod goes back to bed and shrugs it off like it's no big deal. They fall asleep, but Tina wakes up. She hears some noises outside, so she goes and investigates. We then cut to a cool shot of Nancy, and someone's like kind of poking from the wall, like watching her sleep, like, rah! It's kind of cool. They're like coming through the wall. I kind of like that. Tina goes outside because noises happen. Person in scary movie goes and investigates. And we see this. Badass. Love that shit. So creepy without being over the top. Love it. Too bad he ruins it by doing this lame ass run that he does afterwards.
Come here, get over here.
He teleports in front of her and continues to try to scare her by doing different things, including chopping his fingers off like carrots, and green blood shoots out. Kind of cool, but also kind of lame. It's kind of just like, okay, bud. Pick up your goddamn fingers and let's get moving. They wrestle in the bed a little bit. Nah, I'm just joking. Not in this version of the movie. And she peels off his face while they're fighting, which is also kind of badass. I'm back in, baby. Let's go. Tina is still fighting Freddy. Rod wakes up because he hears Tina screaming, and she starts levitating. She like goes to the roof. She gets sliced open, and she starts bleeding everywhere. Rod falls back in shock because he don't even really know what he's looking at because he can't see Freddy, but Tina can. Tina lands back on the bed and is bed. Wah, wah, wah. R.I.P. Tina. Safe to say, Rod probably did not wake up with a boner this time. It's also kind of funny, his name is Rod. Glenn and Nancy run into the bedroom to see what's going on, and they find the aftermath of Tina. But something is missing. Rod. Rod snuck out the window because he knew they wouldn't believe him. Nancy's dad is the lead investigator? He's something with the cops. Dad. Mom. We see Nancy is at the police station with her dad and her mom. At this point in time, they think Rod killed her, obviously. Nancy's kind of a little bit suspicious because she said that someone was in her dreams and she thought she was gonna die, and she invited Glenn and Nancy to come over so they can kind of watch her sleep, make sure everything's okay, and then she dies. So that leaves Nancy to think that Tina was warning them about her death that was coming. But we move on to the next day. A sleep-deprived Nancy is walking to school the next day, and we eventually get to a bush that Rod pops out of, and he does his classic hand cover the mouth technique. Works every time. And he tries to convince us that he didn't murder Tina. While he's doing this, Nancy's dad, cop, remember, comes around the corner with a gun and he arrests him. Nancy was pissed because her father used her as bait, and then she makes her way to English class. I'll give you guys a multiple choice question on who do you think the English teacher is. You ready? Okay, go. You got it. The answer is A, Lin Shaye. That rhymes, and I didn't mean for it to. Insidious girl. Funny seeing you here. You know what else is funny? Seeing them here. You're not supposed to be here. This is the wrong class, Tina. Get out of here, you little rascal. Nancy runs downstairs into some sort of boiler room. Maybe a boiler room inside of Freddy's factory. And she eventually finds the man himself. He does his try to scare him strat, and he cuts himself open. There's like maggots and more green blood. So I guess his blood is in canon green. He loves hurting himself and seeing people's reaction. He's like that kid in school that would flirt with girls with how strong he is. I don't know, just pain doesn't really affect me, especially when I'm mad. All I see is red. Nancy burns herself on a pipe to wake herself up, and it works amazingly, but at a cost. She screams in class looking like a freaking idiot. Nice going, Nancy. Now how are we supposed to get bitches? All right, let's update the whiteboard a little bit, huh? So, dad, cop, man. Not really too much yet on mom. We got Fred here. He's really looking to kill our girl, Nancy. So this is Nancy's scarometer. Now, she, at the beginning of this, was not scared at all. But now that this stuff is going on, she's starting to get a little kooky, if you will. Nancy's probably about right there. A good chunk of being scared, but not completely terrible. Let's get a little map going, right? So let's say like school. Let's just say it's a little neighborhood. Nancy's house, and we got Glenjamin's house. I haven't got there yet, but they are neighbors. They live right in front of each other. Later on, Nancy goes to visit Rod to kind of see what his side of the story is because, you know, shit's getting a little kooky. Rod is not home. Rod's in prison. This is Nancy's home. This is Glenn's home. This is Rod's home right now. He said that he didn't see anybody in the room with him and Tina, but the guy that's been in his dreams has knives for fingers. But all this is starting to really stress us out, so we, as in Nancy is the main character now, by the way, so we make our way back to Nancy's house. We figured we might as well relax with a warm bath, and we start to doze off, and Mr. Fingers, I don't really like that. Edward Scissorhands, that's taken. And Johnny Depp plays that character too. Freddy's arm starts creeping up from the bath. Creepy. But we get woken up by mom telling us not to fall asleep in the bathtub. It's dangerous after all. Nancy hears this, but she says, you know what? Fuck it. And gets dragged down by Freddy. The bathtub gets insanely deep, but she survives. Next door neighbor, Glenn, he sneaks up there unannounced and crawls in through the window. The 80s. What a time to be alive. Nancy says that she's gonna go to sleep and find this man, and Glenn, since he's here, is gonna be some sort of a watchdog. He's gonna make sure nothing happens to her and she's all safe and sound. But the one thing is that he can't fall asleep. He falls asleep. In this dream, Nancy kind of roams around, finds some clues, and Freddy just kind of chases her and does a little Scooby-Doo chase scene. I'ma get you. And pretty much she just wakes up after that. Not too much goes on. When she wakes up, she gets mad at Glenn, which is understandable. He had one job, but in his defense, he probably didn't know what was going on. But that's besides the point. Let's move on. Nancy goes to visit Rod again. He's in his prison cell, and while they're trying to look for the keys because she finally convinced her dad to let him see him again, he's currently getting hung by his blanket. When they finally find the keys, Rod has been hung and he's already dead. At the funeral for Rod, Nancy's mother decides that she's gonna go get Nancy some help. She says that the sleeping problem is a problem. She doesn't sleep, and when she does fall asleep, she freaks out. So she goes to get her dreams examined by a medical professional. Whenever we get there, you know, we get all hooked up. Nancy finally falls asleep, and we start having some irregular patterns in her dreams. She starts freaking out. The doctors rush in there and they wake her up. Nancy wakes up with burnt hair, a cut arm, and she pulls something out from underneath the blanket, and it's a hat. This is the hat that she pulled out from the dream. Impossible. Once they get home, Nancy's mom starts drinking and she is on this kick that Nancy found that hat and brought it somewhere, even though it says Fred's name in it. She thinks that she just brought it and she doesn't believe her. She starts to think that Nancy is just insane. Nancy obviously gets pissed. Nancy tells mom that Freddy is in her dreams and it's what happened to Rod, it's what happened to Tina, and now he's coming for me. Nancy's mom says that that is impossible because Fred Krueger is dead. She said he's been dead for years. Nancy meets up with Glenn at a different place on like some bridge, and at this point we're rocking with Glenn. He's our only safe spot. He's our only home. Glenn points out that Nancy is reading up on booby traps and anti-personnel devices. We've all been there, am I right, boys? She tells him that she's into survival, and he says that he's worried for her. After a little talk with Glenn, we come out to find bars on the doors and windows at her home. So Nancy's home is barred up, dog. It's just on the windows, but for the picture's sake, barring it up. No more Glenn sneaking in. Mom says, come down to the cellar and let me tell you something. No. I think I'm good, dog. So we find out that Freddy was a child murderer and he used to take kids to the boiler room. We find out that Nancy's mom and a lot of other people actually burnt down the boiler room with Freddy in it, given his cooked face. After that, Glenn is chilling at his house and Nancy calls and she's like, hey, I'm gonna find this fucker and you're gonna come to my house and you're gonna kill him. The plan is we're gonna meet up at 12 o'clock. You're gonna pull up to my house and we're gonna find Freddy and you are going to hit him with a baseball bat. And that's gonna kill him. Once it starts getting late, Nancy's watching from her window to Glenn's window, but unfortunately, Glenn's parents are waiting right outside the house. Don't know why, but they are. Nancy at this point is just slamming coffee down like no other. She is on one with the coffee. The mom actually takes the coffee pot and Nancy had another one stored in her room. Nancy, it's been like 7 days since Nancy's fallen asleep. Her scare meter is like right about there. It's pretty high up. Glenn eventually, unfortunately, falls asleep watching TV, so Nancy rings up Glenn's house. The parents pick up the phone. The dad's kind of like, hey, this girl's nutty. Glenn's not hanging out with her because she's a lost cause. And he says that she can't call Glenn anymore. She can talk to him at school in the morning. He hangs up the phone and leaves it on the dial tone. Nancy gets another ring from the phone, but it's not Glenn. It's our boy, Fred, the YouTuber. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Fred. All right, anyway. Freddy says, he's not your boyfriend, he's our boyfriend. And she hears, eeeeee. She jolts back and unplugs the phone. She gets another ring on the phone. Another one. And this time, Freddy's cute little tongue comes out of the phone and starts licking her lips. And then she totally freaks out. Add that to the scare meter. So now that Glenn can't come there, she starts getting the idea that Glenn is about to be next up. She's like, oh shit, we need to get over there. But she can't. She runs downstairs and mom is sitting there and she says, you can't leave because I hid the key. You need to go to bed. She's like, hey man, I'm telling you, some shit's about to go down. Unfortunately, while Glenn is watching TV, he gets, let's say this is his bed, right? Glenn's right here in his bed. This is like a side view. He gets sucked into like some like sort of pit. So he's right here, you know, getting scrambled up somehow. He gets sucked into the bed and then blood splurts out all over the place. So R.I.P. Glenn. His parents run up into his room and they see what's happened and, you know, obviously they call the police. All the police cars show up to Glenn's house, just at ease. Nancy's father is now at Glenn's house. Nancy goes to a different phone in her house, calls up the house again. Now, you might be thinking, why did she even freak out the first time if she could just use a different phone and which would go to a different phone in his house? You know, we're not worried about that, but it just happens. She eventually gets to talk to her dad and she's like, hey, I'm gonna go to sleep. I need you to come into my room in 20 minutes. He's like, sure, whatever. He tells one of his guys, you know, hey, if you see anything happen over there, let me know. She goes to sleep and you might have forgot, but she knows some stuff about booby traps now. We've been studying. So she sets up a whole Home Alone experiment in her house. She falls asleep, she finds Freddy, they do their little Scooby-Doo shit. She starts wailing on him and she tries to bring him out of the dream zone because if you remember, she brought the hat back. So she tries to bring old Freddy back. Does it work? No. It doesn't work. So she's like, maybe I am nutty. And turns out it did work and he was under the bed, which doesn't really make sense because like if you have to be grabbing them, when it makes sense that whenever you come back, you still are gonna be grabbing them, but listen, I'm not a dream expert. So they run around the house, her little Home Alone experiments are working, and eventually she lights Freddy on fire. He doesn't like that. She runs up, she tries to, hey dad, come here. And one of the guys that are outside sees this and they're like, oh shit. So they all rush in there, see fiery footprints on the floor, and it's leading up to the mom's room. The mom is in her bed and Freddy is on top of her like, bah. The dad, with Nancy, puts out the fire on top of the mom. And when they lift up the cover, Freddy's not there. It's just mom's charred corpse. Rest in peace, mom. Nancy and the dad have a little moment and he's like, it's okay. Nancy, she's like, yo, leave the room. I'm all right. Just give me a second. The dad leaves the room and Nancy remembers something that Glenn told her, which is if you don't give him power, then he won't scare you anymore. And she turns her back on Freddy and she's like, I'm not scared of you. And Freddy then loses his power to corrupt Nancy's mind. he just disappears. We then cut to a scene of, I thought it was heaven. Nancy is going to school. She's with all of her friends. They all come back. Once Nancy gets into Glenn's convertible and she waves the mother goodbye, the drop top comes down, which is funny because it comes down too fast, which was not supposed to happen, and the actor's reaction was realistic. That's a cool little piece that I learned. The drop top has red and green on it, obviously referring to Freddy's hoodie. All the windows roll up, and the car drives away by itself.